Okay, so this is the report and the award ceremony for the 2008 ICFP programming contest. So this year, for the first time that I know of, the contest was organized in a distributed manner. So there were two groups that worked on the contest. There was a group from Portland State and a group from the University of Chicago. It's actually quite interesting. I have never met the students from the University of Chicago. So if they'd stand up, I'd like to see your faces. Are they here somewhere?
Yeah.
Oh, they're over there. In addition, in a sort of, I don't know if it's a break from tradition or whatever, Andy Gill, who will be next year's organizer, also played a minor role in this year's organization, so he could kind of get a feel for what was going on. And I think that probably worked out really well. Okay, so what happened? Well, we ran the contest over the weekend of July 12th. We had 336 teams submit solutions, an average of about 3 programmers per team. They worked 3 days, assuming they slept or ate or something about half the time. Then we had 18 person years of work. So I hope that we put all that work to good use. You know, maybe we made a new industrial strength Haskell compiler, I don't know. But unfortunately, they all worked on the same subtask, and we didn't really do it very well. And the thing was to make a sort of Mars rover controller. Okay? So I know that looks somewhat similar to some things that were in the past, but it came across quite well. The people who participated in the contest were quite enthusiastic, and there were many positive comments, okay? And the comments kind of ran the gamut from, oh, it was really easy to get started, or I could have worked 3 years on making it perfect. So everybody had a different take on it, and it worked out pretty well. Okay, so the task, okay, went something like this. You know, recent breakthroughs in higher order statically typed metaspatial communication will enable data to be transferred between Mars and Earth almost instantaneously. Okay, and of course, the winner of the contest will, you know, his program will be used to program the rover on the very next mission to Mars. Well, subject to budget constraints. So, what did people have to do? They had to build a real-time controller. This communicated over network sockets. They had to control a vehicle. They had to steer and control its speed by accelerating or deaccelerating. They had to avoid obstacles, which included craters, boulders, and Martians. Martians were somewhat intelligent and would chase you. There were sensor data that you had to interpret. And of course, the goal was to minimize the time to home base, which appeared somewhere on the map. Okay, and so the idea was to minimize your score, to get from where you started, which you didn't know until the problem initialized, and then get to home base. Okay, so I've done this correctly. There's a little movie. Okay, so there's the motor. The rover is that little green thing. He's steering, and he not crashed, but home base is the big green dot. So this is an actual run from one of the earlier rounds in the contest. You can see the brown things are boulders, and the gray things are craters. The little red triangles are Martians, and the green triangle is the rover. You have to, when we look at some more of these, understand that the green Rover and the red Martians are grossly larger than they really are in the simulation, okay? Because if we drew them to size, you wouldn't see them. So sometimes the Martians and the Rovers pass close by, but they don't actually intersect. So basically the world was a bounded 2D plane. There were these static obstacles. If you hit a boulder, you bounced off. If you hit a crater, you fell in and the simulation was terminated. The Martians, they moved and they had various intelligence. And as the rounds proceeded, the Martians got smarter and smarter and would chase after you. And we'll see some of this in some of the movies. And of course, the boundaries are like boulders. So if you hit the boundary, you bounce off in some fashion, which is sort of non-deterministic. Okay, every rover had some sensors, and the sensors had limited range, and the range was sort of elliptical in shape. And rovers see everything in their range except obstacles that are occluded by boulders. So the little rover there, the purple thing, he can see the boulder B because he can see over the crater, the B on the bottom, but he can't see the little boulder B on the top because it's occluded by the big boulder. Okay. So there is some motion control, or this is really acceleration or velocity control. There's a little three-state diagram. The only thing that you could do was you could accelerate or you could brake, okay? And the braking and accelerating parameters were known. And your actual speed was determined by an equation which really had some acceleration and some friction factors and so on. So the only way you could tell how fast you really were going was by some kind of a feedback loop. You had to determine, you were given some information about where you were, and on the next time frame, you'd find out some more information where you were, and you could kind of figure out how fast you were going. In a similar manner, there was a little 5-state steering, so the only thing that you could do to steer was you could turn to the right or hard right. Okay, and depending upon how fast you were going and what the turning radius was for that run, okay, it would be very, you would turn a little or a lot, and this was, you had to again adjust by some kind of a feedback loop. Okay, so just another thing here. Here's a little example movie where the Martians are a little smarter. You can see all the Martians in the world are tracking towards the he narrowly escapes death, but they get him. Okay, so there's quite a bit of code developed for the contest. There was a server. This was mostly built by John Reppy, who really yeoman's work here in building the server. He wrote it in SMLNJ and Milton. He used the SML 3D library for rendering. Those movies that you saw were things that rendered. It was about 3,300 lines of commented code. The team wrote 2 different sample clients, okay? So the Chicago team wrote a sample client, which was about 800 lines of ML, which shared about an additional 500 lines of the server, and the PSU team. I've been there 4 years. The PSU team wrote a sample client in about 1,400 lines of Haskell. So I have to say that writing the 2 clients was a really useful exercise. It gave us a lot of feedback about how good our description was, an appreciation for how hard it was. The actual problem statement was slightly modified in a number of ways before it was released because we actually wrote clients. There were some random map generators. There was a test harness that we used to run all the submitted solutions, and there was actually quite a bit of submission scripts that were written in PHP. So the submission scripts were kind of interesting. We allowed you to submit at any time and to make multiple submissions. This was a big difference from the last time that I ran the contest in 2002, when if you looked at the time versus submission, there was this huge spike, okay, of hundreds of submissions a minute in the last like 5 or 6 minutes of the contest. So this year, things were very interesting. Starting about 4 hours before the contest ended, submissions climbed to about 6 or 7 submissions a minute. About 10 minutes before the contest, it peaked at about 14 submissions a minute, and in the last 5 minutes, submissions actually tailed off. Okay, people had submitted 10 or 15 minutes before, and they figured, well, I'm not going to get anything better in the next 10 minutes or so on. So I think this sort of multiple submission thing was a success. Okay, so after the submissions, we ran some test of what the language frequency was. So this is a kind of a list of all the different languages. This is the same information visually. Okay, so you can see that Java, Python, and C++ make up about half of all the submissions. Haskell and ML, maybe Erlang make up. So functional languages only make up about a quarter of the things, and well, there are many languages that only had one adherent, and they kind of get lost in the noise.
Tell us about later.
Yeah.
Next slide.
So, having done this in 2002, it says 2002, but having done this in the past, I actually had some data, and so I tried to compare the popularity of languages in 2003 with the popularity of languages in 2008. So you can see the languages across the bottom, and languages with a great big long green spike, okay, were much more popular in 2003 than they were in 2008. So I look at those languages as languages which are no longer in the ascendancy, whose popularity is dropping. So we can see that Perl is dropping, and C is losing quite a bit of its popularity. Okay, and languages with great long blue spikes are languages in the ascendancy, and you can see that Python, C++, and Haskell are playing that. Now, all the little languages down at the bottom, okay, where the population is 1, if it's blue, those are sort of languages that weren't used in the past, at least not in the in the 1 year for which I had data. Okay, and ones were green, which were ones which kind of fell off the popularity list. Okay, where did the submissions come from? Well, we didn't ask, which was a really stupid thing, I have to say. But we did have records of the IP addresses from where the submissions came from. Okay, so this isn't completely accurate data, but if you look, you can see that there is high concentration in what? In North America, Europe. Pretty good representation in Russia. Japan is just overloaded here, and Australia was pretty well represented. But you can see, other than Japan and South Korea, I believe, the submissions in Asia were minuscule. Matter of fact, we didn't have a single submission from China. Well, we didn't have a single submission from an IP address in China. Okay. But since we didn't actually ask people where they were based, we don't know. So and only 4 from IP addresses in India. So I really hope that we can maybe do something to make the contest more popular in Asia, and maybe get some more entries from South America. So the very last thing, we were kind of curious about, how popular programming is in particular countries. So we've computed this little graph of teams per million in population. So the winner, the densest concentration of programmers, according to this metric, is in New Zealand and Australia. So we have any New Zealanders and Australia? All right, good job. And it tails off, and India seems to, and certainly we can do better than that. Okay, so I'm going to turn over the microphone to Tim here, who was a great help and was one of the driving forces between all the actual tools that we used when we actually ran the contest. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that. Or do you want this silly thing? Okay.
So I'm,
You have to turn it on.
I'm Tim Chevalier. Is that on now?
No.
No.
Switch
Switch is on.
Switch is on? Okay, right.
Hello?
No? Okay, give him the session chair mic. That'll work.
Can you hear me now? So I'm Tim Chevalier. I'm a graduate student at Portland State, and those of us who are graduate students might feel is that better? Don't get a lot of attention for our work, and so it was a real change for many of us, and surprisingly moving to be involved in organizing something that complete strangers felt such a sense of urgency about. And when people care about what you're doing, that comes along with people making certain demands on you, often a lot of demands. And so that's why I'm going to be talking about how we communicated with the teams. And we felt we really tried to provide a very simple problem that was open-ended, so people could sort of use their own imaginations and really go in with it. And we'd like to think we succeeded, but the nature of the problem also meant that there was a lot of close interaction sometimes between us and the teams. So first of all, harder than steering a rover on the moon, it was the task of picking a team name. So here are some of the names that we liked, and I particularly like to point out Insane Closure Posse, which is almost the same initials as ICFP, and I can only conclude that the people on that team have attended this conference and know something about the kind of people who attend. And we need a team name that's, good self-reference, and we thought the others were funny as well. And the second way in which the teams communicated with us in English, as opposed to code, was the README files that they were required to submit. And as this first person says here, this is required for ICFP submission. It should explain non-obvious parts of the source code, but that was all she wrote. So we can only conclude that everything was completely obvious. I wouldn't know because I didn't look at the code. Well, another use of the README files that the teams discovered was as a channel for low self-esteem. So these people told us that their code was pretty stupid, and I guess they wanted to make sure that we were not under the misapprehension that their code was any good. If we were about to let them win by mistake, they wanted to make sure that we didn't make that mistake. A lot of people thought that math was hard, and I have to agree. Functional programming is easy. Sines and cosines are pretty hard, I agree. 10,000 monkeys are pretty useless code, it's pretty self-explanatory. And again, it's low self-efficacy, completely unreliable, but at least it's simple.
I thought people were limited to 3.
No, actually it was 5. Actually, one person entered with 7 people. I don't know what was up. I don't speak German, so somebody else can read this if they want to, but it certainly seemed like it was probably profound. Further low self-esteem, the robot had the unfortunate tendency to have a suicide wish. Again, we wanted to make sure we knew. We folks were more optimistic. They were surprised that their code actually worked. And another thing they wanted to share with us. And finally, some people chose a certain language and didn't end up being very satisfied. Another use of the README files was sort of sharing, personal issues. We were gratified that they trusted us enough to, talk about their issues of social interaction, which probably a lot of you can relate to. More complaints about how math is hard. Again, programming is what these people were interested in. They didn't want to do math. They thought it was being completely different. And they wanted to wish us good luck in understanding their code, and again, we appreciated their well wishes. And finally, a word of warning, which we appreciate. These people use Python and warn that side effects may include nausea, dizziness, and temporary blindness. So maybe someone needs to come up with an effect system there. A common motif we noticed in the code seemed to have to do with and we see it's a theme that brings, many disparate languages together. So here I believe we have some C#, that would be C, and that's Haskell, apparently not immune to this, Python, and Java. So what brings together programmers who use diverse language paradigms is apparently alcohol abuse. So I was the self-appointed publicity chair since nobody else seemed to want to talk to other people about the contest. But in these days of the blogosphere, it seemed the contest almost publicized itself. So for example, we were on Slashdot. And you'll note that the following comment was rated by Slashdotters as +5 informative. A comment that explained what ICFP stands for. So, what do you know? For those Japanese that get it, is a site where users submit links and then people vote them up or down. So here's what happened when I searched for ICFP contest just a little while ago. You can see we got 180 hits. Some from last year, but a lot from this year. So we linked with the contest rules, got 54 upvotes altogether, which means a total of upvotes minus downvotes was 54. So that's doing pretty well. We have somebody's blog posts about the contest and video from last year. And more of just a low self-esteem. Somebody wrote about their abject failure. So we're just hoping that they're not going to send us the psychotherapy bills. However, as we all know, just because you have information out there doesn't mean it's all going to be accurate. So here's an excerpt from a blogger who will remain anonymous. So he starts out with some pretty good information about the contest, but then goes on to remark that this year's organizers all have PhDs in computer graphics. So this was news to Tim and to John as well, and they thought maybe they can get better jobs now. And those of us organizers who were grad students were surprised to find we had PhDs at all. So here's some of the means of communication we use. As in many past years, we had a mailing list, and that was meant mostly for teams to talk to each other, although those of us who were organizers also answered questions as well. And the thing we really noticed was there was no spirit of cutthroat competition. There didn't seem to be any information hoarding. People, without even being encouraged or nudged, spontaneously started helping each other out and getting tools and posting them for other people to download and creating new maps since we didn't give them enough maps. And it was really nice that there was this sort of self-emergent spirit of cooperation. And even though it was a contest, it didn't seem like most people were playing to win, but rather just to have a lot of fun. And we had an IRC channel, which I believe also happened for the past 2 years on freenode.net, which is a great service that deserves acknowledgement. And we use an issue tracker, track which will be familiar to some people in the audience at least, and we have a link here. So we asked people to submit tickets rather than posting on the mailing list if they had a question they wanted an answer to. And here are some of the bug reports people submitted. So we presumably want all tickets. So apparently we had some serious server bugs. Apparently the Rover was magical and could pass through walls. We'll fix that. And you can see that this was really helpful in organizing different questions about the contest, some of which were genuine bugs, some of which were misunderstandings, and to the best of our knowledge, no previous contest used this software, so we really recommend it to anyone who's organizing the contest in the future. And we have made RSS feeds of the homepage that people could use their RSS readers to track changes to the web page, and I felt like this probably prevented a lot of repetitive strain injuries for some people because they would have been loading the homepage every 5 seconds otherwise to see if the task had been posted yet. And we hosted all of our web pages for the contest under Dark, so we used Dark's web along with the script that generated RSS feeds from it to make those feeds. So that made it really simple for us. So we were using a lot of existing tools because we were lazy and we wanted to make our lives easier by letting the teams help each other as much as possible. And along this track that came with a wiki. So we set up a wiki, including, as is always important, a frequently asked questions list. So we tried to update the frequently asked questions list every time somebody asked a new question that had not been asked before and that we thought was valid. And of course, there are no dumb questions. So these are just a few of the questions that were asked. And I started out by adding about 8 or 10 questions, and we soon got to hundreds. So you could see there were lots of issues that got put here. It was really convenient to just be able to point people to read the frequently asked questions list, and eventually they started doing that for each other. We also had a feedback page. And this was something we put up at the end of the contest because we really wanted to know what people's opinions were about how it went, what could we have done differently, what was good and what was bad. And Tim showed you some quotes from this, but the important things, I think, are we asked people to attach their name to their comments so that stuff would stay constructive, and we actually were very happy with the feedback we got. It was not all positive, not all negative, but we felt it was mostly fair. And despite many of the technical frustrations that came up during the contest, some of which were our fault, some not, people really managed to stay even-handed and stay calm and give really good constructive criticism. So here are people talking about what went wrong. You can see there's quite a bit of text. What went right? Surprisingly, there's text here too. People liked stuff. People disliked stuff. This person really had opinions. This person had a lot of opinions as well. And there are suggestions for stuff that future organizers should do differently. So if you're thinking about organizing the contest, maybe you should take a look at this. And you can see the URL up there if you want to go back and look at it later.
There's links from the home page to all this.
That's right. So I should also show you the homepage. But first, we also created a page on the wiki for teams to link to their blog posts and write-ups about the contest, and this was because we were lazy. We wanted to have a place where people could post their own links. We didn't want to be responsible for compiling a web page, and as you can see, a lot of people really wanted to talk about their solutions. They created something that they were proud of and they wanted to share. So anyone who's interested in this can also go to the contest homepage, which I should show you as well. You can blame the circa 1996 web design on me, but here's our basic organization. It's ICFPcontest.org, and it's not going anywhere. So you can go here for all of the links that I showed you and much more. So a little bit more about the IRC channel. So here's a little bit of what I got when I searched in my IRC logs for the strain FAQ. So telling people to read the FAQ, topic is read the FAQ. After a while, even other people started telling people to read the FAQ, and ad infinitum. After a little while, when I was running the IRC channel, I felt I could be replaced by a bot that suggested reading the FAQ. And Tim will tell you about the results.
Okay. So now we come to the awards part of the ceremony. And we we had 140 entries in the lightning round. Those were people who submitted a solution in the first 24 hours and wanted their solution to count. All right, we had actually, I think, 142 submissions, but 2 people didn't want their solutions to count. We had 336 entries in the regular round. Actually, I think we had 338, but 2 of them were identical entries under different names because people forgot their key. Yeah, so. And the judges, after looking at a lot of stuff, identified a handful of programs worthy of consideration for the judges' prize. Okay, so the judges' prize winner. All right, so this is there's a picture of him up there. He might be sitting next to him, who knows? In his own words, so I just finished sleeping off a double all-nighter for the programming contest. The task this year was to write a controller for a Mars rover. I tried to get a team together for this contest, but it was apparently a busy weekend and all my programmer friends had other plans. So after thinking about the problem and my situation as a solo entry, for a few minutes I decided it would be interesting to see if I could write it in okay? So this was by far the most interesting entry that we looked at, okay? It comes from a one-person team. It's written in LaTeX with a Perl wrapper for network communications. The programmer took an embedded language and a batch mode document formatting system, collecting what little numerical functions are available, and managed to turn in a working solution for a soft real-time problem and a visualizer. Right? He actually visualized by producing PostScript. So this achievement shows resourcefulness and dedication that is worthy of recognition. More than that, it's above and beyond all any expectations that anyone could have thought. Okay. So aside from demonstrating the ubiquity of universal programming language, this entry serves to remind us why we work on programming languages. It reminds us how painful programming with bad or no abstractions can be. So, the judge's prize is awarded to Stephen Hicks for his entry, The Lone Technician. I must declare, okay, that Stephen Hicks is an extremely cool hacker, and for your efforts, you have here a check for $500 as winner of the judge's prize. Steve, do you wanna say something?
It was pretty fun.
Okay, so winners have their perks, I guess. Steve has a blog, and one of the comments on his blog was somebody offered him a job. So I don't know if he wants it or not. But okay. So the lightning round was all the solutions submitted within the first 24 hours. There were 140 entries. And I've listed in alphabetical order the teams that made the top 10 in the lightning round. So, are there any participants in the audience who scored in the top 10 in the room? Please stand up. Okay. So, the winner in the lightning round. Lightning round winner is awarded to Jabber.ru, who was Alexei Shepin, Alexei is a programmer that lives in the Ukraine, and unfortunately he couldn't get a visa to be here on time. But I talked to him a number of times, and he's a really interesting guy. And so I have to declare that ML is the programming tool of choice for rapid prototyping. Okay, so if anyone's interested, here are the top 10 teams in the lightning round and the languages that they use. So ML on the top.
Which ML?
Okay. Yeah, Ocaml. I didn't look. Okay. So now we now come, I guess, for whatever you're waiting for. Okay, so the main contest. So one of the links that we have here is on the list is the summary of the first 8 rounds. And so we posted these a couple of weeks after the contest ended, and you can see that for each in trial 1, okay, there are hundreds of entries here, and we list all the teams that didn't that successfully started without dying, and their scores on each round. So remember, lower scores are better, okay? And there are multiple rounds, and people often scored better in later rounds. The judging rubric was that you would run 5 rounds, and only your 3 best scores would count for the next to decide if you move on to the next round. And the reason for that was to let people actually experiment in early rounds to try and discover some things about the physics of the Mars world, the turning radius of their vehicle, how fast they could accelerate it, and so on. Okay. As we got further down in the lower rounds, you can see people had, after 8 rounds, we're down to quite a few lesser competitors. Okay, so here are the last 14 teams standing in after trial 10. Okay, and these are the teams that made it to the last trial. Are there any people in the audience who participated on these teams? None. Okay, well that says something. One person. Okay, so just to kind of show you kind of things that went on, here's a trial from round 9. Okay, so here as the Martians are really smart here. Okay, the maps are much denser. We have a lot more obstacles to avoid. He's just sneaking by. Remember that he's just avoiding the Martians, and so that was a successful run in round 9. Okay. In round 10, okay, we started to make much more convoluted maps. Okay, and here you had to sort of go around this barrier. And finally, this is the very last round. Okay. Here the maps are really convoluted. You have to sort of navigate a maze, and when you get out of the maze, there's this big boulder that you have to go around, and so there's the So that was a run from the very last round. Okay. here's I didn't make this graph, but so this graph shows the percentage of teams that scored higher than a certain amount. So you can see right here, there's one team, okay, that scored higher. So this is the winning score here, about 4,000. Another team that's close by, and then a rather large change. So there were two teams here who were vying for the championship. Okay, and the other teams were quite in the background here. So the winner is, okay, Team Smartass, who is composed of Ambrose Feinstein, Christopher Hendry, Garrett Kissman, and Daniel Wright. And I have to say that Java, as much as this hurts me, Java is the programming tool of choice for discriminating hackers. So there's a member from Team Smartass in the audience who come up and congratulations. I have 4 checks here. The prize for winning the main contest is $1,000. There are 4 checks here made out for $250 each to each of the members. Congratulations. Would you like to address the audience a bit?
Not very much. Just thanks. It was a lot of fun competing. It was a great contest. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you. So here were the top 20 teams in the main contest, and the languages that they use. So we will. I'm told that by tomorrow morning, the full results for all teams through all rounds will be posted on the website. Okay, so I just have a few comments to wrap things up here. Okay, a short history of the contest. So if you had asked me a year ago if I would be standing up here talking about organizing this year's contest, I would have told you were crazy. Okay, I did this in the past. I did this in 2002, and by all rights, that makes me immune from ever being asked again. But here I am, and so
thank you, Tim.
So Andy Gill has graciously said that he will run the contest next year, so I want to wish him a lot of luck. I also think that if you're interested in organizing the contest in the year after, is something that you should seriously think about. If you look at here, you can see there are organizations or institutions that have a good concentration of functional programmers. And perhaps you work for an organization that has a good concentration of functional programmers, and your institution is not yet on this list. So that's something that you should think about. So let me talk a little bit about the contest timeline. Jim was casting about for someone to run the contest, and it was everyone had an excuse. Mine was, I did it before. And it got to be quite late in the year, and Jim was pleading, and John and I, neither of us wanted to do it alone, so we said that we'd do it together. I had my doubts about that, but I have to say, doing it together, distributed fashion, worked out really well. We met with a phone conference once a week on Wednesday, Monday, I don't know. Once a week we had a phone conference, the whole teams. We split up tasks, and the thing that really worked was when people said they would do X got got done, okay? And that was clearly that made it work. There were no shirkers. Everybody did their role, and it fell into place quite nicely. So if you really want to see, we didn't even agree to do this until mid-April, okay? We had a first draft of the problem in mid-June, okay? We programmed up, we had our own mini contest, June 16th through, not 28th, 16th through 18th. That's a typo. We actually programmed up a solution in 3 days. We built the infrastructure, all the, the FAQ and the bug tracker and all that. We had that in place on July 10th, and the contest started on July 11th. So that was kind of, I wouldn't recommend that, but the point of this is that this does not need to, to occupy tens of people for, a solid year. Okay, so some advice to future organizers. The only information we collected from teams was their name and email contacts, okay? And really, I think we don't really know very much about our customers. And my advice to future, collect some information. We didn't even know, we had to by hand go look at the sources to determine what the languages were. We didn't even ask people what language they used. I think it would be really interesting to know their location, maybe their occupation, maybe how old they are, maybe their gender, I don't know. I think if we knew who was actually participating in this contest, it would be good. I had some email contact with a guy who told me that, I took my vacation on Friday and Monday so I could participate in the contest. So people really, really enjoy this. They go out of their way to participate. So I think I just have a little advice. Maybe why would you want to volunteer to run in 2010? Well, maybe you didn't like this year's contest. Well, that's fine. You show me up, okay? Maybe there's some pride in doing this. Maybe there's some camaraderie. Maybe you have a great new idea. Maybe you want some bragging rights. I don't know, maybe you don't have enough work to do. Or your students aren't busy enough. Okay, but maybe, just maybe, you want some immunity from ever being asked again. Okay, so to sum it up, okay, this was one of the comments from one of the people. He said, I know there have been some troubles with technical issues, but rest assured that people are only complaining because they found the problem compelling enough to become engaged. Thank you.
Questions?
Could you have your PSU team stand up?
Oh yeah. So what? There are four of us, 4 students on the PSU team. Tim was one. Are they in the room? Garrett, Tim, Chuan Kai Lin, who's not here, and was that it? And Emerson Murphy Hill. So there were 4 of us, and only 2 of them are here. I stood there and conducted, and they did all the work. So thank you so very much to all the team members. One from University of Chicago as well.
There's a question over here.
Dan?
Do you have any statistics on the number of lines of code which
So Dan asked if I have any statistics on the number of lines of code. So I don't, but maybe Tim does.
I tried to collect those statistics. It was pretty unstraightforward. For example, a lot of people submitted their entire subversion history as part of their submission, which could have been fun for us. We didn't actually look at it. And a lot of people had binaries and stuff in there. So I tried to just do a cheap line count for each submission, but I just gave up in despair. There were a few less than 100 line submissions that didn't do horribly awfully, and I would say mostly they were in the ballpark of between 500 and 10,000 lines, and you can draw your own conclusions about correlations between languages and verbosity.
Any other questions? Yes.
You know, we made the top 10 in the lightning round and top 20 in the final results, and you couldn't even put our advertisement on the slide?
Well, so there was a team whose name was like 64 characters or 100 characters long. Didn't fit on my PowerPoint slide. So if you had a shorter advertisement, then I would have put the whole.
Well, we were going by the contest rules of 63 ASCII characters.
So you want to stand up and I'll give you the opportunity?
Sure.
Use the mic.
For September 7th, $49.99, play the Jewel of the Popcat.
All right. So I understand that there's a reception waiting for us.
There's a reception is in the harbor room, which is where we have lunch. There is one